They thought I was just an old mother sitting in the garden until they discovered who really controlled the bank accounts. My name is Patricia Wilson, and I'm 62 years old. For the past 40 years, I've called this Iowa farm my home. Every morning at 5 a.m., I wake up to the sound of roosters crowing and the gentle rustle of corn stalks in the distance. This isn't just any farm. It's 40 acres of rich, black soil that my late husband's family has worked for 3 generations. The white farmhouse with its wraparound porch has weathered countless storms, just like I have. My daily routine never changes. Coffee first, black and strong, then out to check on the chickens. 23 hens and 1 proud rooster named Roosevelt who thinks he runs the place. After feeding them, I head to my vegetable garden, my pride and joy. Tomatoes, green beans, corn, squash, and herbs that fill the air with the most incredible scent when the morning dew is still fresh on the leaves. People driving by on County Road 15 probably see just another farm wife tending her garden. What they don't see is that I'm the one who manages every aspect of this operation. I fix broken fence posts, negotiate with the grain elevator, handle all the paperwork, and make sure every bill gets paid on time. My hands are calloused from decades of work, but they're steady hands that have built something lasting. This farm isn't just dirt and buildings to me. It's legacy. It's where my son Michael took his first steps on the kitchen linoleum. It's where my husband Robert and I planned our future over countless cups of coffee at the kitchen table. It's where I learned that being the backbone of a family means carrying weight that others can't see. Michael is 35 now, married to Jessica for 8 years. They live in Des Moines, about 2 hours away, where Michael works in insurance sales. Jessica is a dental hygienist with perfectly white teeth and an Instagram account full of pictures from restaurants I've never heard of. Then there's Barbara, Jessica's mother, who visits them frequently and has opinions about everything, especially about how simple country folk like me live our lives. I've always been the type of mother who gives without being asked. When Michael needed money for his first apartment, I wrote the check. When their car broke down, I covered the repairs. When they wanted to take that cruise for their anniversary, I made sure they could afford it. That's what mothers do, right? We sacrifice quietly, we support unconditionally, and we smile while doing it. But lately, something has shifted in our family dynamic, like a fence post slowly leaning until one day you realize it's about to fall over completely. Michael used to call me twice a week just to chat about work or ask about the farm. Now weeks pass without a word, and when the phone finally rings, it's usually because they need something. Money for this, help with that, or could I watch their house while they go somewhere? The conversations have become transactional, and I've started to feel less like a mother and more like the hired help. Jessica has changed too. In the beginning, she was sweet, calling me Mom Wilson and bringing homemade cookies when they visited. She'd compliment my garden and ask for recipes. But over the years, those visits became shorter and less frequent. Now when they do come, she spends most of her time on her phone, taking pictures of authentic farm life for her social media, while making little comments about how quaint everything is. The comments started small. "Mom, you don't need such a big garden. It's too much work for someone your age." Or, "This house is so isolated. Wouldn't you be happier closer to civilization?" They felt like suggestions at first, but I began to notice the pattern. Every conversation somehow circled back to how I was living my life wrong, how things could be better if I just listened to them. Barbara makes it worse. During their last visit, she walked through my kitchen, picked up my hand-mixed spice blends and said, "Patricia, dear, they sell all this stuff at the grocery store now. You don't have to make everything from scratch like it's 1950. When I explained that I enjoy making my own seasonings, she laughed and said, "Well, I suppose everyone needs a hobby." A hobby. 40 years of feeding my family from this garden, and she calls it a hobby. The most painful moments come during their phone calls to each other. I'm not supposed to overhear, but sound carries in this old house. I've heard Jessica tell her friends that I'm stubborn about keeping up this big farm and that they're worried about me living alone out here. I've heard Michael sigh and say things like, "Mom's set in her ways, and she won't listen to reason." What they don't understand is that this farm isn't just where I live, it's who I am. Every board in this house has a story. Every row in that garden represents decades of learning which varieties grow best in our soil. This isn't stubbornness. It's knowledge earned through seasons of success and failure. But the conversation that really opened my eyes happened 3 weeks ago. I was coming in from the garden when I heard Michael on the phone in the living room. He didn't see me, and I caught fragments of what he was saying. The farm is getting to be too much for her. Maybe it's time to start thinking about assisted living places aren't as bad as they used to be. Assisted living? My own son was discussing putting me in a home like I was some kind of burden that needed to be managed. That night, I sat in Robert's old chair and really looked at my situation for the first time in years. When had I become the problem to be solved instead of the mother to be cherished? When had my independence become seen as stubbornness? When had my life's work become something they wanted to take away from me? The phone rang 2 days later. Michael's voice was excited, more animated than I'd heard him in months. "Mom, we've got great news. Jessica's mom is treating us to a vacation. We're flying to California, going to stay at this amazing resort right on the coast. 2 whole weeks of nothing but sun and relaxation." I waited for the part where they'd ask if I wanted to come, or at least express some sadness about leaving me behind. Instead, Michael continued, "The only thing is, we need someone to keep an eye on the farm while we're gone. You know, make sure everything's running smoothly, take care of the garden, that sort of thing." "Of course," I heard myself saying, even though something cold was settling in my chest. "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning. I know it's short notice, but this opportunity just came up. Barbara found this last-minute deal, and we couldn't pass it up. You don't mind, do you, Mom? I mean, you're there anyway, and it's not like you have anything else going on." Not like I have anything else going on, as if my entire life was just waiting around to serve their convenience. "No problem, son. You all have a wonderful time." After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen looking out at the garden I've tended for 4 decades, at the farm that's provided for our family through good years and bad, and I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I had become invisible in my own life. Not the matriarch of this family, but the maintenance staff. That evening, they arrived with suitcases and enthusiasm, filling my quiet house with chatter about resort amenities and planned excursions. I cooked dinner, Michael's favorite pot roast with all the fixings, while they showed me pictures on Jessica's phone of the place they'd be staying. "Look at this infinity pool, Mom Wilson," Jessica said, not bothering to look up from her phone. "And this spa package Barbara booked for us. We're going to be so relaxed." I watched them eat the meal I'd spent 2 hours preparing, talking about their upcoming adventure like I wasn't even in the room. When Michael did address me directly, it was about practical matters. "Make sure you water Jessica's houseplants that we brought over. And could you grab our mail every day? Oh, and if anything important comes up, don't hesitate to call, but try not to bother us unless it's a real emergency." They left the next morning in a whirlwind of last-minute packing and excited goodbye hugs. I stood on the porch waving as their car disappeared down the long gravel driveway, and for the first time in years, I felt completely alone. But as the dust settled and silence returned to the farm, something else settled in my mind, a clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. For 2 weeks, I would be exactly what they seemed to think I already was, alone on this farm, working in the garden, taking care of everything by myself. The difference was, now I was going to decide what that really meant. The first 3 days passed quietly. I fell into a routine that felt both familiar and strange. Familiar because I'd been doing most of this work alone for years anyway. Strange because I suddenly noticed how much of my daily effort went towards supporting people who saw it as nothing more than expected service. I watered Jessica's finicky houseplants, collected their mail, and maintained the property just as they'd asked. But I also started paying attention to things I'd been taking for granted, like how the mortgage on this farm was in my name only. Robert had left everything to me when he passed 5 years ago, like how the bank accounts that Michael and Jessica used for their emergencies were accounts I'd established and funded over the years. On the fourth morning, while I was checking the chicken coop, something occurred to me that stopped me cold. I walked back to the house and pulled out my filing cabinet, looking for documents I hadn't examined closely in years. Bank statements, property deeds, insurance policies, all the paperwork that makes up a life. What I found was both illuminating and infuriating. Every major financial decision in Michael and Jessica's adult life had been subsidized by me. Their car payments when money was tight, the down payment on their house, credit card bills that somehow became family emergencies I needed to help with. Even their regular monthly expenses were supplemented by transfers from my accounts that had become so routine I'd stopped thinking about them. I had been funding their lifestyle while they planned my retirement. The more I dug through the records, the clearer the picture became. I wasn't just Michael's mother who happened to help out sometimes. I was the primary financial support system that allowed them to live beyond their means while saving face with their friends. No wonder they wanted me in assisted living. They needed someone else to take care of me so they could keep taking care of themselves with my money. But here's what they didn't realize, what they'd apparently never thought to ask about. All those accounts they'd been drawing from, the credit cards they used for emergencies, the bank cards that made their convenient lifestyle possible. They were all connected to accounts that I controlled completely. I had given them access because I trusted them, because I wanted to help, because that's what loving mothers do. But trust is something that has to be earned continuously. And lately, they'd been making withdrawals from my trust account without making any deposits. On the fifth day, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I called my lawyer, James Peterson, who'd handled Robert's estate and had been telling me for years that I should review my financial arrangements. "Patricia," he said when I explained what I'd discovered, "this is exactly what I was worried about. You've been very generous, but you've also put yourself in a vulnerable position. If something happened to you, or if they decided you were no longer competent to manage your affairs." He didn't need to finish the sentence. I could see the path they'd been laying. Convince me the farm was too much. Get me into managed care. Assume control of assets that they'd been treating as their own for years anyway. What are my options, James? Well, legally, everything is still in your name. You can revoke access to any accounts whenever you choose. The question is, are you prepared for the consequences of setting boundaries with your family? That afternoon, I sat in my garden among the tomato plants I'd started from seeds in early spring. These plants didn't question my judgment or suggest I was too old to know what I was doing. They simply grew strong and productive because I gave them what they needed: good soil, consistent care, and room to flourish. Maybe it was time to start treating myself like something worth cultivating instead of something to be managed. The phone rang that evening. Michael's voice was relaxed and happy, the sound of someone calling from poolside. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Everything okay there?" "Everything's fine," I said, looking around my kitchen, my house, my life. "How's your vacation?" "Oh, it's incredible. The weather's perfect. The food is amazing. Barbara really outdid herself with this place. We're having the time of our lives." "I'm glad you're enjoying yourselves." "Great. Well, I should go. We're meeting some people for dinner at this 5-star restaurant. Don't work too hard, and we'll talk soon." After he hung up, I realized he hadn't asked a single specific question about the farm, the animals, or how I was doing beyond that perfunctory, "Everything okay?" It was like calling to check on the house sitter, not his mother. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be angry, and I wasn't going to be vindictive, but I was going to be clear about something they seemed to have forgotten. Respect isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn, and it's something you can lose. I picked up the phone and called the bank. The next morning, I drove to First National Bank of Cedar Falls, the same bank where Robert and I had opened our first account as newlyweds 43 years ago. Margaret Chen, the branch manager, had known our family for decades. She greeted me with the warm smile reserved for long-standing customers, but her expression grew serious as I explained what I needed to do. "Mrs. Wilson, I want to make sure I understand correctly. You want to freeze all access to the joint accounts and remove authorization for the supplementary cards." "That's exactly right, Margaret. These accounts are in my name, funded by me, and I'm revoking access for all other parties effective immediately." She pulled up my accounts on her computer, and I watched her eyebrows rise slightly as she scrolled through the transaction history. Restaurants in Des Moines that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Shopping sprees that exceeded what I spent on clothes in an entire year. Cash advances that had become a weekly occurrence. "Mrs. Wilson, may I ask if there's been any unauthorized activity? If someone has been using these accounts without your permission—" "No, Margaret. I gave them permission. But permission can be revoked when it's being abused." She nodded with the understanding of someone who had probably seen this scenario before. "I'll need you to sign some paperwork, and I'll issue you new cards with new numbers. The old cards will be deactivated within 1 hour." As I signed the documents, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: the power that comes from making decisions about my own life. For too long, I had been reactive, responding to other people's needs and expectations. Today, I was being proactive. "There's one more thing, Margaret. I want to review the property deed and all the related accounts. I need to understand exactly what assets I control." What she showed me over the next hour was both shocking and empowering. The farm wasn't just mine. It was completely mine, with no liens, no co-signers, no legal obligations to anyone else. The life insurance money from Robert, the savings we'd accumulated over decades of careful living, the investment accounts I'd barely touched. Everything was substantial enough that I could live comfortably for the rest of my life, without anyone's help. More importantly, I discovered something that Michael and Jessica had apparently never bothered to investigate. They had been living on my generosity, not my obligation. Every dollar they'd accessed, every bill I'd paid, every crisis I'd funded had been a gift, not a right. And gifts can stop being given. "Mrs. Wilson," Margaret said as we finished the paperwork, "if you don't mind me saying so, you're making a very wise decision. Financial boundaries are just as important as any other kind of boundaries." I drove home with a feeling of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The afternoon sun was warm on my face as I worked in the garden, tending the plants that had never asked me for anything except care and attention. These tomatoes didn't make me feel guilty for growing them. These green beans didn't suggest I was too old to know what I was doing. That evening, I made myself a simple dinner: fresh vegetables from the garden, a piece of chicken, and a glass of wine from a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. I decided that reclaiming my life was special enough. The phone rang at 8:47 p.m. I know because I looked at the clock and smiled, knowing exactly what this call was about. "Mom." Michael's voice was tight with panic. "Mom, something's wrong with our cards. We went to dinner tonight and Jessica's card was declined. Then mine was declined. We tried the ATM and it says there's a problem with the account. What's going on?" I took a slow sip of my wine and set the glass down carefully. "I closed the accounts, Michael." Silence. Complete, total silence on the other end of the line. "You... what?" "I froze the accounts and canceled the cards. They won't work anymore." "But Mom, we're in California. We're at this resort. How are we supposed to pay for anything?" "I imagine you'll figure it out the same way most adults do, with your own money." "Our own money?" Jessica's voice came through the phone. Michael must have put me on speaker. "Patricia, what are you talking about? Those are family accounts." "No, Jessica, those are my accounts that I allowed you to use. There's a difference." I could hear Barbara's voice in the background, shrill and indignant, though I couldn't make out the words. "Mom, this is crazy," Michael said, his voice rising. "You can't just cut us off like this. We have expenses, we have bills, we have a life." "Yes, you do have a life. And I have a life too. But apparently you forgot that somewhere along the way." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that, For the past several years, you've treated me like a bank that never closes and never asks questions. You've treated my home like a free hotel and my labor like hired help. You've made plans for my future without asking me what I want. You've discussed putting me in assisted living while using my money to fund your lifestyle. Another silence, this one heavy with the weight of truth. Mom, we care about you. We're worried about you being alone on that big farm. You're worried about me being alone? Michael, you just left me alone for 2 weeks so you could go on vacation. You didn't invite me. You didn't ask if I wanted to come. You just assumed I'd be happy to stay home and take care of your responsibilities while you had fun. That's different, Mom. You love the farm. We thought you'd want to stay home. Did you think that or did you decide that? Because there's a difference between someone choosing to stay home and someone being left behind. Jessica's voice came through clearer now. Patricia, you're being unreasonable. We're family. Family helps each other. You're absolutely right, Jessica. Family does help each other. But help goes both ways. When was the last time you helped me with anything? When was the last time you visited without needing something? When was the last time you called just to see how I was doing? I could hear them whispering frantically to each other, probably trying to figure out how to handle this unexpected problem. Mom. Michael's voice was more controlled now, the tone he used when he was trying to sell someone insurance. Let's not say things we'll regret. We're family. We love you. This vacation was just bad timing and maybe we should have communicated better, but cutting off our access to money isn't the solution. Michael, do you know how much money I've given you in the past 5 years? It's not about the money, Mom. Answer the question. Do you know how much? Silence. I do. I spent yesterday going through bank records. $47,000, Michael. $47,000 in direct transfers, paid bills, emergency loans, and covered expenses. That's not including the mortgage payments I've made when you were short, or the car repairs, or the 1,000 little things I've helped with. Mom, I'm not finished. That $47,000 came from my retirement savings, from the money your father and I saved by living modestly and working hard. Money we planned to use for our golden years together. When he died, that became money for my golden years alone. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. I had never spoken this directly to my son about money, about expectations, about the reality of our relationship. But instead of enjoying my golden years, I've been funding yours. And the thanks I get is being treated like a burden that needs to be managed. You want to know what's unreasonable, Jessica? What's unreasonable is expecting someone to support your lifestyle while you plan their retirement without their input. Barbara's voice came through loud and clear now. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You can't trust elderly people to make good decisions about money. That did it. That broke the last thread of patience I had left. Barbara, this elderly person has been making good decisions about money longer than you've been alive. This elderly person owns a 40-acre farm free and clear. This elderly person has enough savings to live comfortably for the rest of her life. This elderly person just chose to stop subsidizing adults who apparently can't afford their own vacations. Mom, please. Michael's voice was desperate now. We're stuck here. We don't have enough cash to cover the resort bill, and our flight isn't until Sunday. What are we supposed to do? For a moment, I felt the old instinct kick in. The motherly urge to fix their problem, to swoop in and make everything okay. But then I remembered how I'd felt watching them drive away, how invisible I'd become in my own family, how they discussed my future like I wasn't capable of making my own decisions. I suppose you'll have to do what other adults do when they find themselves in financial trouble. Call your bank for a cash advance on your personal credit cards. Ask Barbara to extend her generosity since this was her treat. Cut your vacation short, if you have to. Figure it out. You're really going to leave us stranded? Michael, you left me stranded on this farm while you went off to have fun. You left me to handle everything alone while you enjoyed yourselves. The difference is, I actually can handle being alone. I've been doing it for years while you took my support for granted." Jessica's voice was getting shriller. "This is emotional manipulation. You're punishing us for taking a vacation." "No, Jessica. I'm teaching you the difference between a gift and a right. For years, you've treated my financial support like a right. It was always a gift, and I'm choosing not to give that gift anymore." "So this is it?" Michael asked. "You're just cutting us off completely?" "I'm not cutting you off, son. I'm cutting off the money. If you want a relationship with me, we can have one, but it's going to be a relationship between equals, not between a bank and its customers." "This is insane," Barbara's voice came through. "No mother treats her children this way." "You're right, Barbara. Most mothers don't have to. Most children don't take advantage of their parents' love and generosity until the parents feel like unpaid employees in their own family." The silence that followed was the longest yet. I could almost hear them trying to process this new reality where I wasn't automatically solving their problems. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice small and defeated. "So what happens now?" "Now you finish your vacation with whatever resources you have available to you. When you get home, we'll talk about what kind of relationship we want to have going forward. But it's going to be a relationship built on mutual respect, not financial dependency. And if we can't afford to finish the vacation, then you'll learn an important lesson about living within your means." After I hung up, I sat in Robert's chair and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. Not the peace of avoiding conflict, but the peace that comes from standing up for yourself, the peace that comes from remembering your own worth. 3 months later, my life looked completely different. Michael and Jessica did manage to get home from California, though they had to cut their vacation short by 4 days and stay in a much cheaper hotel. Barbara apparently had to cover most of their expenses, which I'm sure she reminded them about frequently. The first conversation we had when they returned was difficult, but it was honest in a way our family hadn't been honest in years. Michael admitted that they had been taking my support for granted. Jessica acknowledged that they had been making assumptions about my future without including me in the decisions. They both apologized, and more importantly, they both began to understand that love and money are two different things. Our relationship now is smaller but stronger. They visit twice a month, and when they come, we actually spend time together instead of them just checking items off their obligation list. Michael has started asking about the farm operations, not because he wants to take over, but because he's genuinely interested in understanding what I do. Jessica brought me seeds for a new variety of heirloom tomatoes and asked if I'd teach her how to can vegetables. They still struggle financially sometimes, but they've learned to solve their problems without automatically turning to me. When Michael's car broke down last month, he called to ask if I knew a good mechanic, not to ask me to pay for the repairs. When Jessica wanted to take a pottery class, she saved up for it herself, instead of hinting that it would make a nice gift from me. The boundaries I set weren't about punishing them. They were about teaching all of us how to have a healthier relationship. I learned that saying no doesn't make me a bad mother. It makes me a mother who models self-respect. They learned that appreciation isn't just about saying thank you, it's about not taking someone's generosity for granted. Barbara and I will never be friends, but we've reached a civil understanding. She's stopped making comments about my simple country life, and I've stopped taking the bait when she does. She's also stopped pushing the assisted living agenda, probably because she realized that the woman who cut off their credit cards from 1,500 miles away isn't someone who needs help managing her affairs. Most importantly, I rediscovered something I had lost without realizing it. My own identity beyond being someone's mother, someone's helper, someone's solution to problems. I'm Patricia Wilson, and I'm a successful farmer, a skilled gardener, a financially independent woman, and a mother who loves her son enough to teach him how to be a responsible adult. The farm is thriving under my sole management. I've started selling my excess vegetables at the farmer's market in town, and I've been asked to speak at the county extension office about sustainable gardening practices. I've joined a book club and started taking watercolor painting classes. I've begun traveling, using the money I used to spend on other people's emergencies to see places I've always wanted to visit. When people ask me about that summer when I froze the credit cards, I tell them it wasn't about the money. It was about remembering that respect is earned, that love without boundaries isn't really love, and that it's never too late to teach people how to treat you. To any mother out there who feels invisible in her own family, who feels taken for granted, who has become the solution to everyone else's problems while her own needs go unnoticed, I want you to know this. Your worth isn't measured by how much you give or how many problems you solve. Your worth is inherent, and you have every right to demand that others recognize it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling people to take advantage of your love. Sometimes the best gift you can give your adult children is the opportunity to learn how to stand on their own feet. And sometimes the most important person you need to take care of is yourself. The garden is beautiful this year, and for the first time in decades, I'm enjoying it without worrying about who needs what from me. The tomatoes are heavy on the vine, the corn is tall and strong, and everything is growing exactly as it should, including me.